Hey guys, so in a bit of a twist, we are switching things up this week. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, I'm actually out on vacation this week, so I did not have a chance to record a new episode for this week. But two, last week, I had a fantastic episode here talking about Disney Channel original movies with Amy Lewis from the Popculture Retrospective podcast. But I was actually on her show the week prior talking all about Nickelodeon. And so in an effort to kind of cross-promote here, Amy is wonderful. I wanted to essentially give you something to listen to this week. And so I'd like to introduce you to the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast and hear the episode that Amy and I did. It was fantastic. We had a great conversation. And I will be back next week with a brand new episode of Generation S.
All right, so this evening I'm so very excited to welcome Dan Kemp to the show from the Generation S podcast. And I love the whole Generation S thing. I definitely remember. I don't think I was actually somebody that wrote the S like that, but I'm very definitely remember people having that on their binders and their folders. So the Generation S podcast focuses a lot on the 90s and 2000s, much like this show does. So the overlap here is perfect. And you have the podcast and a YouTube channel. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast itself and kind of how it got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, the name of it is Generation S, and I say it every episode. It's a podcast about growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s. And it all started because I always knew I wanted to do a podcast, but I could never think of anything where I'm like, what am I really passionate about? Or what's something I could talk about every single week, right? Because that's, as a podcaster, You're always like, what's the next episode going to be about? And so I just got to thinking and realized, like, the one thing I couldn't get sick of is just talking about nostalgia and my childhood. And it was easy to talk about because it was my own memories or maybe sometimes my perceived memories, because I'm sure there's nostalgia goggles on a lot of the stuff I do talk about. But that was really the kind of the crux of it. And so I was like, well, let's just talk about it. And so I was trying to think of different names. And I remember usually Reddit would always throw up that S symbol all the time going, does anyone remember this? And does anyone remember where it came from? And everyone's like, yeah, I totally used to draw that. But no, I have no idea where it came from. And I remember the person. True. Well, and I remember the person who taught me to draw it in like fourth grade, right? And so everyone knew about it. Nobody knew where it came from. And so the idea is that, well, why doesn't my podcast discuss like shared experiences from like growing up? Because there's so many things that, you thought were maybe exclusive to your own childhood that like, nobody else felt this way, or nobody else, ate this food combination or whatever it was. The subjects of every episode I do are kind of generalized. Today I know we're talking Nickelodeon, but it could be anything from Nickelodeon to I just did an episode with my wife recently where we talked about like mall culture. And so those are kind of like the driving force behind the conversation. But the idea is that we start talking about things that, oh my God, just totally triggered something in the back of your brain you haven't thought about for 20 years, right? Just like that S symbol. So that's kind of the idea behind that. And so I've been doing it for about a year now. I just actually had episode 50 come out this week of, that we're recording.
Yeah, and that's amazing that you've done that many episodes in 1 year.
I didn't think I could.
God bless you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 3.5 years in, and I think this one you're on will be episode number 75. So good on you for sticking to it and being so consistent. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
And takes a lot of dedication and a lot of work. And you often have a co-host with you on the show too, right?
So every episode I have a co-host. I have some that come on more than others. It just depends on the topic and availability, obviously. So Lou Carnevale is on most of my shows. I know the one that you listened to get prep for this was another buddy of mine, Derek Taylor, who's come on for a few episodes. As I mentioned, my wife comes on for some episodes if I want like a kind of a feminine touch to whatever the topic is. So, for example, a few episodes back, she reviewed the new Little Mermaid movie that had come out just because it's one of her favorite movies from her childhood. And so I was like, well, let's talk about it. So it just depends on the topic, and it also depends on who's available. But I've yet to do a solo episode. I feel like I couldn't necessarily talk by myself for an hour without my voice going totally hoarse.
Yeah, it is. Yes, I've experienced that myself. Yes. Oh my God, it's awful. It's bad. The editing when it's solo is I can tell exactly like what happened with my voice based on the wavelength, and it's interesting. Well, I can so relate to that because I feel like I have thought about things and realized things I totally forgot about forever until I started doing the show, and it's amazing how it can really stir up your that part of your brain, like you said, that you forgot about something for 20 years. And it's so comforting to look back on that time period, because I think everybody's biased towards their childhood, but I think that we certainly grew up in a really great era, and just profound amazing children's programming and movies and music and stuff like that. So this era is definitely a lot of fun. And you mentioned something kind of off not on the video here, but about how I have like a voice that would be good for true crime podcasting.
Yes.
And as I was listening to your show too, I'm thinking to myself, do you work in broadcasting or something when you're like as like your day job or anything?
No,
you definitely have like a very broadcast, clear, easy to listen to, calming to listen to. Just great.
Well,
great
thank
vocals.
you. Sure. No, so the short answer is no, not currently. I just have a normal, boring corporate day job. But I did do radio for a number of years when I was in college, and then the first couple of years, out of college, I did it a little bit. So I actually went to school for radio and television broadcasting. I ended up being an afternoon drive DJ when I was 19 for about a year. And then I did weekends for a pop station for about 2 years. And then moved down here to Atlanta. I live in Atlanta now. And I got on one of the top 40 stations here. It's called Star 94, which fun fact, actually, it's the station that Ryan Seacrest started his career on. So that's my claim to fame, is that I shared an office building with Ryan Seacrest about 20 years after he was there. And so so I did that for about a year. That wasn't my career at that point. It was just something to do for fun. And to be honest with you, another reason why I'm doing a podcast now is to kind of chase that radio high that I got, almost 20 years ago at this point. Because there is nothing, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. There's no feeling like just cracking a microphone, having something to say, and hearing and it's the weirdest thing, because every time I bring a guest on that's never done this before, when they hear their own voice inside their headphones, it totally throws them off. And to me, it gets me so amped up. And so there's nothing like it. And so over the years, I did radio for a little bit. I actually hosted trivia for a while, just because I always, again, you get a microphone, you get to talk to people. It was great.
Right.
My wife didn't like me out at bars late at night when we had a 3-month-old at home. So that didn't work out for a long term. But this is great because I'm doing it in my home studio. And I actually do. I mentioned I got this one Generation S. I've got a second podcast now that I just started. And also I do on the side, I do like freelance voice work for like other podcasts and like kids programming and things like that. So I'm going all in now.
Yeah. Well, good for you. It certainly comes across. I mean, without you even saying anything, you could just tell like you have that knack, and your YouTube channel is awesome. I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's really like, it's not even just the video of your podcast recordings. It's like separate things that you're doing. I was watching the one that you did about the, which I totally spaced on or didn't realize at the time, but all those knockoffs from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
I mean, come on now. Like, what was it? There's like the kitten, there's pizza kittens or something.
Samurai pizza cats. There's SWAT cats. So you got 2 cats on there.
Oh my God.
You had street sharks, biker mice from Mars. Yeah. So many. And there's more. Done. And that's just 10. I looked up. There's so many more I could do in like a future episode if I wanted to.
Yeah. Oh my God. That is, who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? See, all these things you learn when you start taking deep dives into everything is just, it's crazy, but good job with that too. I mean, really, really well done. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. So I'll definitely make sure to put a link to not only your podcast, of course, but your YouTube channel as well into the show notes, because it's some good stuff that people just eat right up, for sure. So what Dan and I decided to discuss this evening is the fabulous game shows from Nickelodeon during really the golden era of Nickelodeon. Again, I'm biased, but I think the mid to late 1980s and early 1990s was really Nickelodeon in its heyday and its prime. I don't know if have you ever seen the documentary The Orange Years?
I have. I love that. It's fantastic.
Oh my God, that was like, I could just cry in the fetal position watching that show. Oh my God, it was so
But
good.
in a good way.
Yes. Oh my God, so good. It's like, oh my God, Nickelodeon really is so amazing. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I really miss it. Yeah.
When I think of childhood and nostalgia, literally Nickelodeon is the first thing I think. Like, it's
Yes.
when I think of a show or something I saw on Nickelodeon, I can literally picture myself 25 years ago, what I was doing at the time, the room I was in my house,
Right.
more than any other programming or channel or anything. Like, for some reason, Nickelodeon, like, I have memories of it from most of, like, throughout the entire year. I can pinpoint, like, Christmas time, I was watching the Rugrats Hanukkah special or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it was so ingrained in my childhood. And I don't know why. And I'm sure a lot of people, like, they don't know why. It had such a deep, profound impact. And it was just, they had banger after banger, whether it was the game shows or the cartoons or,
Right.
I mean, everything. It was great.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that you said on your episode where you talked about some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight is that Nickelodeon at that time, they weren't really trying to market anything or they weren't trying to sell anything. They were just making quality children's programming. And that's exactly what they were doing. That was really their sort of mission statement, I guess, if you will, when they started that channel, was to make unique, engaging, educational, fun, lighthearted children's programming. They weren't trying to hawk anything or get you to buy anything, although they may wanted people to go to Universal Studios. But besides that,
totally worth it, though, by the way.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah, and they talk about that in the Orange Years, too, about just how, like, crazy that got.
Yep.
But, yeah, Nickelodeon at that time was just absolutely incredible. So that's what we are going to talk about this evening. And we're not going to go in any, preferred order other than going in chronological order,
Sure.
not to create any bias. But, of course, there is some bias because these shows are just amazing. So the first show I thought we could talk about, which aired first, was Double Dare. Which aired from 1986 to 1993. And what do you remember about Double Dare?
So Double Dare was a show that by the time I started watching it, I think it had already actually kind of gotten either like canceled or whatever it was. Like it was running on reruns, obviously, all the time. So, but earliest memories, honestly, I think I had a VHS tape that had episodes of Double Dare on there. And I know there was different versions of Double Dare. Like there was the one with just the kids. It was like 2-on-2. And then you had like super sloppy Double Dare, which I don't ever remember watching. I'm sure
that
I
don't remember either.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was just a short-lived, version of it or whatever. The one I remember the most, honestly, was Family Double Dare, where you had like mom and dad and then two kids. Because and it's funny because looking back, I've seen episodes of just the kids and then the ones with the family, and the obstacle courses in general were so much better on the family version because like you had like competent adults running these admittedly very challenging obstacle courses, so at least they could get past like maybe the first 2 or 3 pretty easily.
Right.
So those are my memories of it, and I just always loved, I love the trivia because I'm a big trivia head, right? So I've always loved trivia. So that part was great, and then just again the physical challenges and just being so envious of. I've always wanted to jump into a pile of green whipped cream. I mean, who wouldn't, right? It just like a sensory overload.
Right, or pick a oversized nose.
Absolutely.
And try to find a flag. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember some things I learned about when I was doing some research is that they kind of based the show off of trivia, of course, like, Trivial Pursuit, and then also Truth or Dare, and then also Mousetrap, which I thought
Yep.
That makes sense based on the obstacle course at the end. And I certainly distinctly remember with my sister us trying to sort of reenact the obstacle course in our living room, and we would like try to go under the blanket and get a flag on top of the couch and jump from one end of the living room to the other. I mean, we were just so inspired by that show because it was just so creative and so much fun to watch that we wanted our living room to be an obstacle course, which of course it wasn't. But watching those kids do that with whether it was the kids version or with the families and stuff like that, it just struck a chord, I think. And there's a reason why that show was I guess apparently was one of the most popular television shows on cable at the time that it aired, for a few years there, which I think is certainly very, very telling.
Well, let me ask you this, because I don't even think I brought this up on my episode when I did that. I'm going to put myself out there as sounding totally nuts, but again, that's what my show's about, because you never know who else might have felt the same way. Did you ever feel like those flags looked like fruit roll-ups to you?
A little bit, yes, I could see that.
Because they were just
very
red
flimsy.
and shiny and flimsy, and I just wanted to eat it. I didn't know, it just looked like a fruit roll up. And I don't know if anyone else is even thinking that. I'm probably crazy now, but I had to get that out
I don't think so. The timing of that, though, who knows? There may have been some subliminal, messaging.
I ate a lot of fruit roll ups during that part of my childhood, so don't get me wrong. That's probably why, but it reminded me of a fruit roll up.
That or
but I've never asked that to anyone out loud. This is literally cathartic for me.
Yes, well, this is a safe place, so it's okay to it's okay to bring that up. You're in good hands here.
Awesome.
But yeah, I could see that, and I certainly remember somehow we tried to make our own flags that we would shove down our shirts like they did. When they got through an obstacle. Was there an obstacle that was your favorite that you would have wanted to try to do?
Yeah, actually, yes. There's two of them. One was, we talked about the nose picking, so I'm going to give that an honorable mention. The other one was the mouth, where to crawl through the teeth and then go down the back of the throat, and it was like a slime slide or whatever. But there was another one that just seemed so, I don't know, just seemed goofy and weird. I can't remember if it was a car wash theme. Basically, you had to get inside and get cranked through like a press, where you got the two wheels going underneath you and above you, and just kind of roll you through, and you almost get squished through it, and then you just get covered in chocolate syrup. So that one just always seemed like such fun. And then I think those are the main one. And then the other one that I always was curious about, just from a behind the scenes perspective, was the dog food, where it was a giant dog dish.
Yeah.
And I'm like, was that dog food? I just say, they always talk about the slime being oatmeal or yogurt or whatever, but they don't ever talk about the dog food. So I always wondered what that was, and I never got my answer. That's a good
question.
But
well, maybe someday when you try to convince Mark Summers to come on the show,
it's funny.
He may be able to answer that question.
I actually did reach out to him about coming on my show, and he got back to me, and then he's got this. This is the true story. He's like, yeah, well, I got my other, because he just launched a podcast as well. So he said, I'm launching my own podcast. Reach out to me in a few months once it's gotten better, and we'll connect. And I just haven't had a chance to yet. So we'll see. I don't know if I can. I'd love to get him on if I can, but
same.
Yeah, he did tell me specifically though, do not ask me Double Dare questions. Because I'm sure he gets asked a million questions. So he's like, I was like, listen, we'll talk Food Network. Totally cool. But I might ask him off camera, hey, just answer this for me. Do you know?
Right. That's understandable.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah. I guess when they did test audiences for the show, a lot of the kids thought that Mark Summers was in his 20s when he did the show, but he's actually in his mid 30s.
He was
pretty interesting. Yeah.
He's very youthful.
He is, yeah. And I guess he didn't really talk much about his age on air and stuff like that, but he definitely has a youthful spirit. And I attended 90s Con recently. Well, not that recently, I guess. It was in March in Hartford, Connecticut, and he actually was there.
Oh, nice.
He had a table, and you could go up and do a selfie or get an autograph and stuff like that. And I was just kind of taking it all in. I didn't do any celebrity stuff. I thought it was pretty cool that he, continues to reach out to his fan base and all of us, millennials, or I kind of consider myself sort of half Gen X, half elder millennial, really being cool about still connecting with fans, which I thought was pretty cool, because it's not like he really needs to be there, to earn any, he's still busy and active and stuff like that. But I thought that was pretty cool that he was still, willing to be active and with fans, and I'm sure being asked about 5,000 questions about Double Dare.
Yeah.
But he's
or what would you do? That was one of my other favorite shows.
Yes. Which is that, I thought about covering that too. But I was like, oh my God, I think if I have to watch that theme song is going to get stuck in my head and it's not going to leave. So,
well, let me ask you, because do you feel that
Yeah.
that's a game show or is it like a talk show?
well, I think it's hard because it's like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because like you guys were saying, I mean, I don't really remember a lot of the talk show components of it, but I remember people being in that, they call it like the pie pit or the pie pan,
Pie
or the
pod, and then you had like the
Or
pie
pie pod, okay.
slide. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
audience participation and just getting messy. So that's where it's like maybe it's a game show, but at the same time, he would just talk to you on camera with his just about random things. So it's a weird one
Right.
because it's
is.
a very honestly, that's like the perfect I don't know if they took that one on the road, right, where they just travel to different, like you could go to like different colleges and universities or whatever, high schools even,
Yeah.
and just have kids,
Yeah.
because I feel like that's like the perfect format for that, where you don't have to set up a ton and still it's the same kind of general vibe. But no, I
Right.
always loved that show.
Yeah.
And I, of course, I watched it because I knew Mark Summers from Double Dare.
Right. He was such a beloved. I mean, it's like anything that if he would have been on anything, he could have, whatever the show would have been. I mean, he was just such an icon and connected so well with young audiences. That's like anything that he would have done, I would have wanted to watch because he just has that,
Yep.
that staying power and that charisma. And he's very, very beloved. And I'm a big Disney World fanatic. So when he did a Food Network show about Disney World Unwrapped, that was like on my always have to watch list. So he's pulls at the heartstrings on many, many levels. So maybe the next time I go to 90s Con, if Mark Summers is there, I'll make an effort to
Talk Food Network. I'm sure he'll talk your ear off at that.
Yeah, definitely an icon. And then did you ever watch the reboots? There was one, I guess, in 2000 and 2018, and I haven't had cable for a very, very, very long time, so I don't even remember those. But did you watch this at all?
So 2018, no. Same thing. I have not had cables probably about 10 years now. Double Dare 2000, I think I may have watched. Actually, I remember Mark Summers was on the first episode of that as like the special guest host or whatever. I may have watched it. To be honest with you, by the time it was like the early 2000s, I wasn't watching as much Nickelodeon. Like I was still watching it, but I moved on to other shows and stuff like that. But so maybe here and there, I don't remember it being anything better. Or I still, when I think of Double Dare, I still think of Mark Summers' Double Dare, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be a hard thing to really reboot. I'm not really big on the whole reboot thing a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And if he's not the host, I mean, that's just so disrespectful.
Right.
No, okay, that's a little extreme. But yeah, it's just, it's not the same, not the same without him.
Yeah.
That is for sure. But yeah, if anybody here listening to the show is, was a big Double Dare fan, you have to see the Orange Years documentary that I think you can rent, or at least
it was on Hulu.
You can rent on. Oh, okay.
I think I saw it on Hulu. I didn't pay for it. I have a Hulu subscription, so I streamed it on. So I assume it's still on there, but I don't know. This was probably last year that I saw it.
Okay, yeah, I rented it on Amazon, and there's also a great documentary about You Can't Do That on Television also that
nice.
Can at one time could rent on Amazon if it's still there. All right, so the next show on the list with another very repetitive theme song that gets stuck in my head, that is Wild and Crazy Kids.
Welcome to Wild and Crazy Kids! The show that goes anywhere and does anything to find kids having fun. With your hosts, Jessica Gaines, Omar Goody, and Donnie Jeffcoat.
That ran from 1990 to 1992. And it's interesting, like a lot of these game shows, it's like they only ran it, only filmed it for like 2-ish years and got, a boatload of episodes out of them and then just put it into syndication for, 10 years following. So sometimes I was like, God, it seemed like that show was on forever when I was a kid. It's like, oh, actually.
That's what I was just going to say, is there's so many shows that you're like, wow, that took up such a big... It also is the fact that I feel like time moves a lot slower when you're younger. So like what is only, in fact, maybe a year or two of your childhood, or what felt like 4 or 5 was only a year or two when the show was on. So it could also just be our perception of time as we were younger. But Wild and Crazy Kids was definitely one that was not on for too long. But again, it was on all the time. And oh God, I love that show though, because that was one where like I really thought I had a chance to get on. Like Double Dare was fine. Like
Yeah.
but like Wild and Crazy Kids was like, okay, they're just literally, it feels like they just literally went to kids' schools and grabbed a bunch of kids and threw t-shirts
Yes.
on them and said, all right, go outside. You're going to go play field day games. And that was it. So I thought I had a
Right.
shot. Like there's a
Right.
chance they could show up at my school and we would be on Wild and Crazy
Right.
Kids. It never happened, obviously.
Yes. And how amazing would it have been
Yes.
if it
Oh, yeah.
did. Yes. Yeah. I remember watching that a lot with my sister too. And we, again, just always trying to reenact stuff, you know, which was just such a core part of like my childhood memories is just, you know, you see something interesting on TV and you want to be like it or
Yep.
do something like that. And Wild and Crazy Kids was one of them. And I distinctly remember a couple of different events that they had on. One was they would go to some public pool somewhere and they got an NFL player. I'm trying to remember what his name was. And he would throw football passes to the kids and they'd have to jump off the diving board and try to catch it, which I thought, oh my God, that looks like, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I'm sure that.
Oh, I did that. Yeah, my dad would throw. Yeah, we would do that. We had a pool in our backyard. My dad would do that. He would throw the ball from the deck
Yeah.
and we would jump in and try to catch it. So I don't think he ever saw the show. I guess that's just probably like literally like every dad game ever, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe that was probably
Yeah.
part of the appeal. Yeah, my dad liked to just
Oh,
throw
that
us into
too.
the
I mean,
pool
don't
to
get me wrong.
show off his karate, his strongman karate stuff
Nice.
back when. Yeah. Yes, many home videos of going to the pool with my dad. Weekend pastime. And I also remember another one, and this is one I would have wanted to do, is they had two kids, which again, I don't think this would probably not be legal now on TV because the kids could have gotten like so injured. Is one kid sat on a skateboard facing another kid sitting on a skateboard, and they kind of put their legs on each other's skateboards and rolled down a really steep sidewalk or something in a park. And I think it was, based on whoever got it down,
Right.
Down at the fastest. And of course they had, I'm sure they had helmets on and, elbow pads and stuff like that, but it was just like in hindsight, it's like so hysterical that, let's just like throw two kids down
What's the worst thing that
down the
happened?
hill
I mean, it's
Right.
And I think that's
Right.
another reason why I like that show so much is that because honestly, a lot of the stuff they did, you could just go do, right? It wasn't like Double Dare where you were on a set and you had obstacle courses that were built. You could try it, obviously, but like Wild and Crazy Kids, you could pretty much reenact that yourself if you wanted to with all of those games. Because most of those games they did, you probably played a version of as a kid, so you knew what to do already, right? I think there was like a tug of war episode. They did like tug of war one time. So literally, it's kids field day, right? That's what it reminded me of. There was one game in particular that I always thought I would win if I could go on it, and it was where you had to make Donnie was one of the hosts. You make him laugh.
Oh God, he drove
but if
me
you could
nuts.
make him laugh, you won, and nobody can make him laugh.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I bet I could make him laugh. I don't even know what I would do, but I'm like, I could figure something out to make him laugh.
Yeah, God, I don't remember that, but I just remember his demeanor for some. I don't know why, and I think I talked about this in my Nickelodeon episode I did a long time ago. But just his mannerisms and the way that his like posturing and how he would stand when he'd talk,
He reminded me of
I don't know how,
what's his Zach from Saved by the Bell. That's I was kind of the
I
vibe
can see
he
that.
gave.
Yes.
Now, fun fact, and I think I do mention this on my Nickelodeon episode, but do you remember Omar Gooding on that show? The brother of Cuba Gooding Jr. And you see the resemblance when you look at them side by side, but as a kid, I was not putting two and two together. And then, of course, he went on to Omar went on to play. I think his name was Mo in Smart Guy on the Disney Channel.
Wow. See, I wonder if I think I remember you talking about that, but I think by the time that show came on, I was a little bit older. So I don't remember that, but I'm now going to need to look that up because I remember the show Smart Guy, but not really watching.
It was a fun one. Again, only on for like a season or two, but it felt like forever as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably aired it in reruns for like 5 years. It's like, what? Couldn't you give the show more of a chance when like it was actually being taped? These poor kids trying to make a living. I remember Donnie Jeff Coates. So both Donnie and Omar were there for both seasons, and then there was one female host one year, and then another female or co-host, I should say, female co-host the second year. I
remember Jessica was the redheaded girl. I can't remember the name of the other girl that was on the first season, but I remember anytime I would watch an episode with the other girl, I get so mad because I was like, no, I don't like this new host. And she was fine, obviously, but I didn't like the new host for some reason. Do you ever do that with like shows that you watch as a kid where like they they change out actors, or like it's a certain season of a show where like, all right, if it's this season or this whatever, I don't want to watch it. Like I don't want to see this character or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally. Just like I can't watch like Good Morning Miss Bliss, which usually it's like the other way around, but like the precursor to Saved by the Bell. It's like
Haley Mills from Parent Trap. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's like no. I mean, usually it's like you want the original,
right.
But for me, it's like, oh god, that's good.
Yep. Or there was speaking of Nickelodeon origin of Rugrats. So Rugrats had a shift in their animation style. I think in the second season or third season, where which is the season that I remember watching the most. And so I remember anytime I would watch like an early episode of Rugrats, like the animation was like rougher and like the voices were a little different. And so I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can watch this. This is just, it's not what I'm used to. And so it I was very routine focused as a kid, if you couldn't tell. Like if something was not part of my routine, like something inside my head was going haywire, and I had to like figure out how to cope with that.
Right. Yeah, I know. I can certainly attest to that too, because I think when we were, kids, there wasn't a ton of stuff to watch. There wasn't like an endless amount of channels. So if somebody goofed up the one show the one time that it was on that week or whatever, I mean, that would like, it's something you could just look up another episode or stream a different one, or go on YouTube and find it. It's like, well, great, like they screwed up.
That's the thing is. The joy of not knowing what's going to be on TV, like that's gone. Like, and you have cable still, but again, even with that, you just hit the guide button, you can see everything that's on. So, and my kids will never know what that is like, unless I like show them Pluto TV and stream that. But like, all right, I'm going to put this on, and that's it. You're not going to know. But I think that would drive them crazy.
Right. Yes, I always try to tell I don't know why I bother telling I have a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I was like, you guys are so lucky with all these choices you have. It's like, I don't like this show. It's like, oh my god, we can type in like airplanes and find 5,000 things to watch. It's like it wasn't like that.
Well, mine are 8 and 5 now, and so they know how to use our TV better than us. Sometimes they'll just come downstairs, they'll pop it on the Fire Stick, right? And they're, I think, my youngest, he's got don't judge, but we got him like a tablet, right, just to use every once in a while. So he'll pop on like SpongeBob SquarePants, which I love that he loves SpongeBob, by the way. It's one of his favorite shows.
Sure.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, that show is still on for kids. So it's not like it's an old show because it's still on. So, I was thinking, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's funny, the don't judge thing, but it's funny how I think our generation, we put a lot of, I think we have a lot of guilt. If we like let our kids, do this, that, or the other, then I think about, it's like, you know what? Like I watched a lot of TV
a ton of TV as a kid, yeah.
Like tons. And it wasn't like, and I don't think our parents shared that same, like, that same guilt, but it's like, I mean, I remember a lot of TV shows from, like being 4 and 5 years old, and that's a result of, watching a pretty decent amount of TV.
Well, they always,
I'd like to think
they always would say like, oh, well, don't watch TV, go do something that's like educational, whatever. I'm like, dude, honestly, a lot of what I know is from TV. Like, I hate to say it, but like I've learned a ton, like even not just like trivia stuff. I've learned like real world facts from watching TV.
Right. Yeah. It's a medium that, you can remember things. I mean, I can't remember how to, find the angle of a triangle, but I can tell you, sing the theme song to the Wuzzles. And I think that's important. I think that's an important life skill that, can really transfer.
I think that's just to bring it back to the game shows. I think that was really effective. Yeah. Nickelodeon in general, like their programming was definitely geared towards kids and enrichment, but not in like a super obvious way. And so,
for sure.
What was great about the game shows was that they encouraged physical activity. As silly as that is, nowadays it's not, because that's
true.
Like, good luck getting your kid outside to play for more than 15 minutes without getting bored. But like back then, like, no, I'm sure it's on your list, but maybe not. But like Global Guts, right? I watched that.
Yes.
So we'll talk more about it. But like that show, like maybe want to go out and like shoot basketball hoops. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Oh, amen. Yeah, I so agree. That is a really good observation. I think that is so true. Just like we were talking about Double Dares, like I wanted to run through the house and jump over stuff and ride a tricycle through whipped cream. I mean, I think that's totally accurate.
And that's what I feel is maybe missing today from some kids' programming, because there's some good shows out there. Do not get me wrong. Like I will defend Bluey until I die. Not that I need to really defend it, because I don't think anyone hates Bluey, but like there's not a lot of shows out there that encourage physical activity these days. Like I think in order to get my kids into that, I'd have to put on old episodes of Double Dare or whatever, and that's how they get it. Because otherwise, I mean, it's not gear. It's not trying to accomplish the same mission as it was 30 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I think that's very, very accurate. Yeah, for sure. Yes, I've heard. We've not watched Bluey, but I've heard
It's
good
amazing.
things. I think
yeah.
That's I've heard. That's
it
a
is,
Disney
and it'll make
show,
you
right?
feel like the best and the worst parent in the world, and it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, note to self. Yes. Yeah, we're very much into trucks and kind of more like real life stuff, which is great. But there's certainly that cartoon aspect or like active kid shows. There's certainly a component missing to what my kids view these days. But I guess, well, speaking of, I guess it's didn't promote activity, but also video games, which it was, I guess, kind of hard for Nickelodeon to initially buy into. But the next show that we could talk about is Nick Arcade. Which again, 1992. It's kind of unclear how many. I think it was two. I think it was 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when filming.
They don't really
ended.
have a good record of
It's unclear.
I mean, like when it aired and whatnot. But as far as like when it was canceled, I don't know. That was one that I watched in reruns for sure, because when that came out, I mean, I was born in '87, so I was 5. By the time I was watching it, it was reruns, and I remember I would watch it before school in the mornings. It was on at like 7 o'clock. Or it might have even been like 6 or 6:30. I would get up pretty early, and so that was how I remembered. I remember I had seen it, like I thought I had dreamt it, and then I found it again on TV, and I'm like, oh, this is real. I thought I had made it up in my head until I found it again. I'm like, oh, these kids really do go into a temple and shoot lightning bolts at a wizard. This is great, and so it just it blew my mind as a kid.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah, there's actually a really great documentary on YouTube that somebody made about Nick Arcade, which I'll put in the show notes. I think that's a guy who hosts kind of like a wrestling YouTube channel, but for some reason decided to go on this tangent about Nick Arcade. And it was really well done, and he had clips from some of the producers and stuff like that. It was just really well done. Highly recommend. But yeah, I guess it was really, groundbreaking what they did, because it wasn't, the kids were really playing in an interactive video game. So like they're throwing a snowball at the elves or gnomes or whatever that was. It was, the computer could sense that they were doing that and where it was getting thrown, and the kids could see themselves on a really big, like, rolled out. It was like
the weatherman. It was like doing the weather. Yeah, it was like, because it was green screen behind it, or what, I don't know what color it was, but so yeah. So what I learned from that documentary is, so like the set for Nick Arcade was huge. It was like, I think it was 10,000 square feet, because they had like a full on, because the last phase of that show, I'm trying to remember what that was called, like the video zone, I think. So they would go and kind of do this, interactive video game, and there was like stairs to go up, and there were like actually stairs to go up, and it was a full set to be engrossed in this video game, which was just like incredible. And it took years and years to put these programs together that were specifically designed for the show. So it wasn't just like a superimposed, kid on top of some, video game, and they're like faking that they were playing. It was, they had
like
to actually interact and
real video game.
And I think that was, you talk
unbelievable.
about that Video Zone segment. I think that was great about most of the Nickelodeon game shows. I think the exception being like Wild and Crazy Kids or What Would You Do, is they had like the final level, right? Whether it was Nick Arcade as a video game level or, you know, Guts with the Crag or Double Dare with the super, you know, the mega obstacle course. Like they had the final. That was what, and that's what you always look forward to at the end. That was the highlight, right? It's like, okay, I want to see who makes it to the end, but I got to watch the end. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yes. You're right. They totally built up the, you know, like being in English class when you're in junior high. It's like at the climax, you know, like climbing the mountain. What are the story elements that are leading to the climax of the story? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Oh my God. And it's like, who's going to end up in there and who's going to end up going to the Video Zone? And again, Phil Moore, who I know you guys touched on him, another outstanding, I mean, kids host. Like you wanted to hang out with him. Like when I was a kid, I wish he was like my uncle. Like I wanted Mark Summers to be my uncle. Like they were both so good. And I guess Phil Moore had to audition like 5 times for the show, and they actually were going to go with somebody else. And I'm trying to remember why that didn't pan out. And thank God it didn't, because he was so good. Oh my God.
I always loved him in Figure It Out as well, as a panelist on Figure It Out. Did you ever I know that was a little later in the 90s. Did you ever watch that show though?
Vaguely, yeah, a little bit. I was born in 80. I'm in my 40s now, which is really bizarre to say. Still not there, but I can like see the gray. I can see the gray hair. But yes, I not as much as Nick Arcade. You know, not as much as some of the earlier.
So he was,
stuff,
you would have like the celebrity panelist basically ask. It was there was an old 60s or 50s game show that it's basically based off of. It was like, what's my line or whatever. Yeah. And so, but they would ask the guests. That was another show that I wish I could be on. Was Figure It Out, mainly because I had a huge crush on Summer Sanders. So that was like,
oh God, you didn't. Yes. So, oh my God. Oh, and she was on NBA
That's right.
Inside stuff.
Well, and oh my God. Olympic swimmer. She was just fabulous all around. But anyway, so Phil Moore was often a recurring panelist guest, along with Lori Beth from All That, and then Little Pete from Pete and Pete.
Oh, geez. She was they were both at 90s.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have new podcasts out, so they're probably trying to promote those.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So, but anyway, back to Arcade. I love the fact that, again, it was a show about video games, which I've always been a huge gamer, still to this day. But they would play games that I'd heard of before, right? Like Super Ghouls and Ghosts. And I remember they played Sonic the Hedgehog one time, and I would get so mad because I owned Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was really good at Sonic the Hedgehog. And so I'm watching these kids. First off, playing it on an arcade is like terrible because they're like, it doesn't work for that game, but they're playing it badly, and so I'm getting so frustrated. Like, I could totally do this better than them, and so that was another show that I wish I could have been on because I loved the video game so much, and I'm like, oh, I would have been terrific.
Yeah, I would have sucked at that show. I would have been good at like Double Dare and Wild and Crazy Kids, but oh my God, terrible. We bought Nintendo, and that was like, and we'd play it for like 20 minutes, and that was like I could never get. Yeah, I wish like I just didn't have the patience. But I remember playing like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on NES.
Well, that game's hard. That's you gotta get into an easier game if you're gonna go that route. Like,
I feel like my tolerance for like trying to figure stuff out with video games is very low. But I still love that show, and that's again just a testament to the creativity of Nickelodeon, the fantastic hosts. Oh my God! And then I liked they had some miscellaneous celebrities on that show too.
I remember they had the kids from Salute Your Shorts on one time.
Oh, that's
a great show.
Oh my, that is my absolute favorite. I think number one probably childhood TV shows that I wanted to be on that show. I wanted to go to camp with those kids. Oh my! I try to like follow as many of the actors. Oh, well, and they all Instagram. I just adore that
some
show.
of them went on to do like big stuff. Like Donkey Lips has a very successful career in acting and voice acting. What's his face in the show? Buttnick. He I remember him. Danny Cooksey. I remember he voiced Montana Max on Tiny Toon Adventures, which I thought was the coolest ever.
Oh wow. See, I remember him from Different Strokes. And then he was so cute when he was little.
John Connor's friend in Terminator 2. I was like, oh, there's I recognize the redheaded mullet anywhere. Like, that was amazing.
I know. He made it cool.
How would you compare Salute Your Shorts to Hey Dude? Because they came out around the same time.
Yeah, I think Hey Dude has its place. but I think that I found Salute Your Shorts to be funnier. And I feel like I could relate a lot more to the kids on that show too, because I feel like I've always been sort of like a nerd like Sponge, but then also is it Telly or Tully?
Oh, Telly with the redheaded
Telly,
girl.
yeah, the Tom. Yeah, and there's the tomboy girl who is always
Kiki?
trying to like make her way with sports. I feel like her name was
I
Telly.
don't remember it.
There's like
maybe
ZZ Zip and
yeah,
Dana.
there's no, okay.
So ZZ was kind of the environmentalist, kind of like the
That's who
precursor,
I'm
like
thinking of.
Phoebe,
Yeah, ZZ is the one
Friends.
I'm thinking of, and then so Telly was the jock, and then in the second season you had Pinsky show up to replace Michael, who was kind of like nothing character, and then he was the jock as well, and that was a whole big thing between them.
Yeah, how about you? Are you team Hey Dude?
I think I got to be Salute Your Shorts as well. I watched it more. I think Hey Dude was more like a teen dramedy, not dramedy. It was more comedy.
Yeah,
it was, but it was. I think it was geared towards
of
kids that were older than I was. Salute Your Shorts was definitely like, and honestly, I mean, everyone knows. If you say what is the one episode of Salute Your Shorts you remember, it's always going to be Zeke the plumber, and if it's not, you're lying.
Yes, which is the thing, which is the stuff.
And then I also learned from that show how to make fake puke if I wasn't feeling good. Like, do you remember that one where like they were going to make them go do some activity they didn't want to, so they like mixed baked beans and all this stuff together and like puked all over Ugg's feet.
Yeah, which may he rest in peace. Kurt Bailey actually passed away
not too long ago, right?
So crazy. Yeah, in the last 6 months, maybe. Yeah, and he was. I mean, I think
he wasn't that old.
50s.
Yeah, so I always loved Ugg.
It stinks. Yeah, I love that show. That is, we used to play camp. I wanted to go to camp because of that show and didn't get to go, which I
remember.
Not happy about.
I had a sixth. So every sixth grade class in my school that I went to, they would go on a camping trip. There's a nearby Boy Scout camp that they would take a field trip to. It was like an overnight. And I remember I was the victim of getting my boxer shorts stolen and hung up on the flagpole. And, on one hand, I'm like, all right, this is just like Salute Your Shorts. On the other hand, I was kind of pissed because that was my only pair of underwear that I brought. And so I had to get that down. And it was, it was just very uncomfortable to change into them because they still had like mulch and stuff in it in pine straw. So, but it was.
Wow. Do you have like photos from photos from when that happened? That you could...
Again, this was, late 90s. I didn't even have there's no digital cameras. I didn't bring a camera. So I'm sure one of our teachers has it somewhere, but I mean, I never saw it, anything like that.
Yeah,
I do remember that.
Oh man, God, that's them. Yes, I'm sure that was inspired by that show for sure. There's no way around that. We managed to record a bunch of episodes on a VHS tape, and one thing my sister would always do was sort of like design the little stickers that we put on the VHS tapes. Because her handwriting was really nice and very artistic, and so she wrote Salute Your Shorts and then drew like a little pair of like boxers on the tape, so I knew which one to grab off the shelf because
is that one streaming now on like Paramount? Because I haven't checked.
I think it is, yes, and we decided to like cut back on all of our streaming stuff, but if I were to go back to any streaming things, that would I think be at the top of my list for the sole purpose of being able to watch that in like decent quality because I have such an emotional attachment to that show.
It's funny because I'd say, and again, I know we're supposed to be talking game shows, but my one show that is not streaming anywhere unless you want to get a low quality version was The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Like that one is not streaming anywhere. They never even released full DVDs of it. Like, one of my favorites.
I have at least one of the seasons, not two. At one point, it was
like, but only like
on
one
DVD.
or two seasons, and there was like 3 or 4 seasons that came out. I think.
Yes. So I think I bought 2 of those. That is probably in the right below Salute Your Shorts. That was such a brilliant show.
Yep.
So good. That's what makes me think like this. I actually was saying to myself recently, like, when for some reason, and maybe you are like this too, is depending on what time of year, there's like certain things that like you have to watch, and for some reason, when summer hits, I just really, really want to watch The Adventures of Pete and Pete. And my wife, I don't think, didn't grow up being as like weird about TV as me, so it's kind of one of those things I have to like watch by myself. When
she won't watch it with you. Come on.
I think it's one of those. I think there's a lot of things that, unfortunately, it's like if you didn't watch it growing up, then like if you try to go back and watch it as an adult, it's like, ugh. Like there was, like she really loves the movie.
I love that movie too.
And it's not bad, but it's not like but she also likes like Weekend at Bernie's, which I didn't grow up watching, which I can't stand that movie. And, so I think Pete and Pete's one of those things where I think she would like, her eyes would roll so far back.
No, though. I just feel like it was a well-made show that maybe, I don't know. I would say have her give it a shot because there's so much. Every episode is about a childhood problem, but like blown up to like epic proportions. And I think that's what I remember there's like a few, well, honestly, I can remember more episodes than I probably even realized, but like I remember the episode where they got locked into school overnight and they were just messing around. I remember the episode where Pete wanted to stay up for 11 nights and break the world record, and he almost did it. I remember the episode with the guy who he wanted to meet the man who made his underwear, and so he showed up.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Expect her, like,
he's like the perfect guy or whatever.
Like that.
So I always admired how he ate ribs because he just ate them so perfectly. It's God, that's so many good episodes. I gotta grab the DVDs that I can then because I didn't realize that they put out at least 2 seasons. I thought it was just one, but I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember which ones I have, but I think we have a really great kind of small business here. I live in Maine now. I'm from Illinois, but I've lived in Maine for a long time. And so we have this great store chain called Bull Moose that's in Maine and New Hampshire. And they have sell DVDs and, use DVDs and stuff like that. So you can hit up another store in another town that's in that chain and they can, get you those DVDs and they're all in like in good condition and stuff like that. And so like my kids really like Popular Mechanics.
Oh yeah, I love that. There's a magazine.
Really bad 90s. Yes. So they love that. And of course you can't find that anywhere, but I went on the Bull Moose website and they have it within their, chain of stores. So we're going to be getting some, 1995 DVDs about firefighters here in the next few days. So I think that's where I got the Pete and Pete ones. Because as soon as I saw them, like,
you got to have those.
You got to buy it when you see it. Because, it's like, who knows how long this is going to be available. So, but it's nice to know there's other people that appreciate Pete and Pete. Because that was a just fantastic show. So good. So good. All right. Well, we'll try to reel ourselves in here and get, which is just the layer. Again, I was talking. I had a guest on yesterday that I was recording with, and it's just I feel so bad for and they don't know any different, but kids now. I don't think there's going to be as much of an emotional attachment to stuff as. Things like we were kids because there's just so many choices and it's like, you're not going to be emotionally attached to some Instagram influencer or some YouTuber in the same way that, we were to some of these shows. So yes, exactly. I wanted to interrupt the show for just a moment to share some exciting information. The Popculture Retrospective podcast is now sponsored by Protocol Labs. Here's a bit about this fantastic company. Do you know why no skincare company guarantees improvements or your money back? That's because they know they aren't using the very best, most science-backed ingredients on Earth. Why? Because we had to invent new technology to capture them. We know it's weird, but trust us. Apply this bright yellow sauce to your face every day for 2 weeks and watch the compliments start rolling in. Wow, your skin looks amazing. So even, so bright. Did you change something? What's the secret? This is a special form of retinol that was previously uncaptured by science. It's made from the same ingredients that make bell peppers and carrots their color and is estimated to be 20 times more powerful than regular retinol, and without the drying. Money back guarantee. 92% of people see results in 14 days. They are giving listeners a special 25% off discount code. Go to protocol-lab.com and use the code PCRetrospective25 to claim your discount now. And, like I've mentioned before, I would never endorse something on this show that I don't believe in myself, and I can easily say that Protocol Labs is something that I can get behind. I've been using their products for the past few months, and I can honestly say that my skin hasn't looked this good in years, and I swear I am not making that up. Aging and harsh winters are not doing my skin any favors, let me just tell you. But the Protocol Labs products have significantly improved my skin, and my sister was a huge advocate on moisturizing and taking good care of her skin and always had the best kind of face wash and face wipes, so I know that she would be a huge supporter of Protocol Labs as well. You can find a link to Protocol Labs on my website at www.popcultureretrospective.com. And now, back to the show. So, so with that in mind, we'll continue talking about the awesome game shows of our childhood. And the next one is Guts, which aired from 1992 to 1995.
risen to the top. Do you have it? It takes a certain kind of something to keep your heart pumping, something everybody needs to achieve to succeed. You'll need a lot. Do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it?
Guts to play, guts to strive, equals energy, so you strive. Guts to strength, guts to power, equals bravery, equals power. So ask yourself, do you have it?
You're unstoppable, endurance unnatural. You're trying your best and not all things are possible. Fullness unfolding, thing you're holding. Persistence and courage together you're molding. Short shot to the clock, on top, non-stop. Go get a good sport, good times you got. You see your goal, you reach and you grab it. Now ask yourself.
Just 3 individual kids, I think, was competing in various different athletic events and endeavors, if you will. Like the big the tricycle around the around the track with like a ramp here and there.
You had kayaking. You had the one I remember the most was there was boogie board. It was like waveboard. Yeah, and then there was one that was like the giant basketball hoop. You got to jam, like you basically jump like 30 feet in the air, or at least it looked 30 feet from the TV. Or like there was one like that where you had to throw the football through the hoop, like the goal. So and you remember, of course, it started off as just Guts, and then it changed into Global Guts, which is the one I watched the most. Was Global Guts. Yeah, and it was basically the same show, but
I remember. Yeah, well, you guys brought up a good point on your episodes. Kind of like they made it sort of more like, kind of like the Olympics, you know. Which I feel like the Olympics were a big deal also in the '90s. I mean, they still are, but not in the same way as it was. I feel like in the '90s, because again, you had to watch it when it was on TV when it aired. There was no way to. Maybe they played it later at night again or something like that. But, you know, the Olympics, I feel like were a huge deal in the 90s. So I'm not surprised that they kind of tried to pull from that a little bit with Guts. But I also remember when they would they'd want to kind of give a little bio on the kid that was on the show. And so I'm trying to remember what the host name was.
It was Mike O'Malley.
Something. Yeah, Mike O'Malley. Thank you. Yeah. And you'd be like, Susan, spill your guts. And then they, you know, hi, Susan lives in, you know, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and is in 7th grade and likes to tap dance.
Yeah,
you know,
and just you'd have like random shots of her playing at her house or whatever. Now it was cool because again, you know, when they went global, you know, a lot of times the kids on the show couldn't speak English, and so they would have like a translator or whatever. And that's, you know, I think that's when I first, as silly as it sounds, that's when I first realized that, hey, not everyone speaks English. Like, there's no kid, like, and that's fine. Like, I had such a myopic view of the world, and I think Global Guts helped me understand. Like, I'd never heard of the country Portugal until I watched Global Guts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, Mom, everything I learned on TV. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. You learned about acceptance and diversity.
You did, you know?
I mean, who knew?
But without realizing that's what it was called, I guess. Like, it just, I think it helped me just realize that it's just, this is how it should be. You know what I mean? And you didn't think otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that was another show, too, that if I could have, like you're saying, with the slam dunk, it's like, who wouldn't have wanted to get attached to a bungee cord? I feel like pretty much every event involved being attached to a bungee cord, as well as like wearing a mouth guard.
Yeah, I remember they had mouth guards. They always had the yellow helmets on and knee pads. I mean, so they were safe. Obviously, they were very safe. But and it's funny because I think I do remember this on my episode. Like, it's I would love to have been on the show. I was never the kid. Like, I was never the sports kid in school, so I never would have gotten on that show because I didn't like sports, but I liked Guts.
Yes, I know. It wasn't that, again, like, I'm not, wasn't a big video game person, but there was just something about how they did these shows that, like, you could kind of relate to the kids, or, just made it really interesting, or, like, I don't think I probably thought that much about camp, but, the kids that, on Sawyer Short seemed so relatable and seemed like the kids that live down the street from you. Like, I wanted to go to camp, I mean, how many shows can say that now?
Yeah. Well, it gave you a glimpse into things. It gave you a glimpse into things that you may not have been exposed to in your own life, or were too afraid to be. I don't know. Like, again, like I didn't do sports, but I knew sports from watching Guts. I mean, obviously those are very extreme sports, but you kind of, you know, or like, again, with Salute Your Shorts, like I've never been to a summer camp, honestly, never did that. They're very expensive. We couldn't afford that growing up, but between that and then there was another show on the Disney Channel called Bug Juice. Do you remember that show?
Oh God, I love that show. Oh
it was
my
the first
God.
reality show I think I've ever seen.
Loved. Yes, and I could still sing that freaking theme song too. I have a lot of like really great listeners of the show who are giving me a hard time, like in a good way, like because I've gotten like theme songs stuck in their heads, because it's like that is my problem is every day I like wake up and so now I'm gonna have Bug Juice probably stuck in my head all weekend. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that show. And again, it's like I want to go to camp. And I think that camp is actually in Maine.
Probably. I think it was in the Northeast.
Camp Wasiata is in Maine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in Maine. It's not near me. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have like gone there and, I don't know, had some sort of like, I had a moment there. But yeah, I mean, that was another great show, and all the just drama with like relationships and being in like 7th grade, and
which I could totally relate to at the time, because I was I think I was 5th or 6th grade maybe when it came out, but like it's when you start thinking about those, for me anyway, it's when I started thinking about that type of thing, and like, oh, hey, girls, right? It's all right, here we go.
Right, yeah, and and I remember thinking the kind of that head male counselor, it was like he was so. I think everybody had a crush on him too. It's like, oh my God, like I want to go to that camp, and so many great shows. Everything television's just really downhill. They should really.
I always want to say that until I realize that I guarantee you every generation before us has said the same thing. So I feel like I really shouldn't say that, but I feel that way.
Right?
Because it's but really, TV was great back then.
Yeah, it really was. The rewatchability factor is just.
So let me ask you, as far as Guts goes, did you always want to own a piece of the Radical Rock?
Yes, I would have. And if I did, it would be, it would be on that shelf back there. But yeah, I mean, that was like, I think it was hard to not look up to those kids, which now looking at, I think I watched a couple episodes of Guts just because I like to kind of get like in the zone when I do shows on topics. I'm sure, and watching that's like, wow, that looked like that took about 1.5 minutes to get to the top of that. But at the time, absolutely. What about you?
No, I mean, of course, I always wanted to own the Radical Rock, and I always thought the Crag was the coolest thing. I'm like, how did they build a mountain inside of a studio? And then I realized it was literally like a climbing wall with like metal sticking out of it, and again attached to bunny cords, so they get up to the top safely. But. No, it's no. Which again, it's the final level, right? It's the final level of the game. It's what you're waiting for.
It's the pinnacle.
And I forget, because honestly, it's been a while since I've seen an episode. I know that you earn points throughout, and then if you win, you get points. But like, did your standings going into it affect anything about? I think it was like the time on the Crag, maybe like when you got to go, or
I think so. I think if you, I think that was probably worth. I think that was worth, the most amount of points out of anything. So if you got to the top first and, you could push yourself up to the, top spot or whatever, if you got up there quickly, which I think it's funny that they really incorporated all the bungee cords in, because some of the stuff, it's like, is that really necessary? Like on that, it's not like they were like dangling off of, off of a cliff, or like it was like a traditional rock wall or, indoor rock climbing wall. It's like, do you really need to have like a bungee cord? Or like when they were pulling themselves across the swimming pool, do they really need to be attached like a bungee cord?
Well, you know what? I guarantee you some lawyer at Nickelodeon was like, you know what? We're going to do this just in case. We're going to cover all of our bases and then some. And which is ironic because, again, I feel like the 90s was a time of like no helmets and, maybe not as much as like the 80s or the 70s. I was just going to say that. I think the 90s people started getting a bit more safety conscious. Like I remember like early on, like no one wore helmets when they rode bikes. And then as we got older, like wear a helmet. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's fair.
No, I started skateboarding when I was in like kindergarten and rollerblading and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And I remember my parents got me like really soft, like knee pads and elbow pads, but no helmet.
Yeah.
And I'm like rolling down, going down a steep driveway on a skateboard, and I'm like 5 years old. It's like, oh, it's
In hindsight, maybe.
yes, in hindsight, yes. It's like, oh, it's a good that like my elbow is fine. My elbow doesn't have a scratch on it.
Well, you listen, yeah, but your elbows look
huge...
terrific. You may be vegetative now, but God,
right.
What knees you have.
Right, exactly, yes. Oh, you have no bruises.
Oh,
God, what's your
We're going to have an
secret?
open casket on the bottom side because those knees look terrific. I mean, let's not look at her head,
right.
but don't forget this is
exactly.
these are the same parents that would smoke in the car with you with the windows cracked slightly just to because it was too cold outside.
That's true.
So, I don't their perceptions of safety were a little different than what we. I'll tell you what, man. I don't smoke or anything like that, but as far as my kids,
right.
I've got them so buckled down to our car when we go on a trip, it's not even funny.
Yes.
I know. And I don't even want to know what their kids are going to do in 20 years or whatever it is, right? What's it going to be like then? Who knows?
Right. That is very true. I definitely remember sitting in the front seat of my grandparents' huge sedan vehicle. No seatbelt,
big cushy leather seats though, super comfy, right?
Right, and a perfect ashtray in the back.
That was great for sticking gum in, by the way. I did that a time or two.
That too. Yes. I'm sure.
I got in trouble for it, but I Yep.
Yeah, they don't make cars like they used to. No features, nowhere to put the gum, nowhere to put your cigarettes. It's sad.
Everyone got so sensitive.
Well, on that, yes, it's true. Gosh, everybody's so whiny and such babies now. All right. Well, on that note, yeah. So the final show, which I think you shared that was your favorite show, out of the games and sports on Nickelodeon, was Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Legends of the Hidden Temple. With your guide, Kirk Fogg. And here he is now.
Which aired from 1993 to 1995, hosted by Kirk Fogg in his denim shirt tucked into his khaki shorts, and with his sidekick Olmec. And one thing interesting thing that I learned is that the voice of Olmec was a gentleman named D. Baker. And so in addition to voicing him, of course, he had to open and close the mouth of Olmec, which he did with a wire, which is very sophisticated.
D. Bradley Baker, I believe, is his full name.
Okay.
And he's done, I forget what else, he's done other voices that I feel like we would know from our childhood.
I imagine
because he was pretty well known. I just remember Kirk Fogg, I always thought okay, well listen, this is this guy's Indiana Jones. This is a man's man right here. Swinging in on that rope. I mean, come on now. That's and by the way, you notice no bungee cords in this show.
I know that's
maybe
true.
A couple of the challenges where they have to go up 50 feet in the air, but no, these are real kids. Okay, these
right, yeah, these are hardy.
They had their skateboard helmets spray painted gold. They had their little mini knee pads, their swimming shoes. These guys were ready. They were ready for anything.
Yes, yeah, I love the feeling of knee pads over a pair of khakis. I find that to be very, it's very comforting if you're comfortable, if you're sweating or running through, a maze or, a house with obstacles.
And for those of you that really love chafing, this is the way to do it,
Right. Yes. That is so true. A nice sweaty rectangle around your kneecap is.
Yeah. If you want to have a permanent red ring around your entire knee, this is how you do it.
Right, and your elbow.
Well, but again, they're going to look great if you die. Your elbows are going to look terrific.
That's right. And was this a mouth guard show? Do they wear?
I don't associate. Probably. Maybe I remember them more with Global Guts, so I don't think they were. I remember the gold helmets and I remember the knee pads and the fingerless gloves because they just look so cool. And,
well, that was on Guts too. That's
fingerless gloves. You have to have fingerless gloves because God forbid you grip the entire bar with a covered finger. That's not safe at that point. So you have to have
or if you handle a basketball, sans
glove at all,
weightlifting gloves.
I'm surprised. I don't even know how they do it in the NBA. Quite frankly, I feel like if I wore a pair of gloves, I'd be going toe to toe with LeBron James right now. I mean, I can't say that for sure. Just speculation, obviously, but those gloves really they add an edge to it.
They do. They made it upped the cool factor for sure. I wonder if they got to keep the
uniform.
keep the
You know,
logo. That'd
it's
be a nice memento.
I really hope they did, because that'd be really nasty if they didn't. Like, you're just wearing someone else's
That's true.
sweaty pads. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee. I think they
That's
took the T-shirt home, obviously. But as far as like the
Yeah.
other stuff, who knows? But I always and now of course you can buy one on Etsy or Amazon or whatever. I always wanted a Legends of the Hidden Temple shirt.
I know. Yeah, I've heard that there are. I've heard rumors that there's. I haven't been to an Old Navy in a very long time, but apparently there's like Camp Anawana.
Oh, get
shirts
out of
there,
here! Yeah.
Which So I'm
might need to make a trip,
Go
yeah.
there. Yeah. There's one not too far from here, so we'll. Might put that on my to-do list.
I think you should.
Yeah. So a couple other interesting things that I learned about the show is that originally the show is going to be titled The Secret of the Haunted House.
Oh, I didn't know
which
that.
Just doesn't flow off the tongue. Yeah, it just doesn't. Just doesn't come out like the Legends of the Hidden Temple. So I'm not sure how the name change came about, but certainly I'm glad that it did.
I feel like something called The Secret of the Haunted House would not fly outside of October, though. And maybe that's why they changed
Right.
it. Whereas, like, Legends of the
Yeah.
Hidden Temple, that's like a year-round, like, everyone wants to explore a temple. Like, because you got to admit, like, Indiana Jones had to have been, like, the big influence here, right?
Yes, I would think so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think this applied to a lot of the shows on during this time, but there was a very intense recording schedule. So they would record like 6 episodes in one day. So they would do, I guess, have, X number of group of kids and they'd all go through like one, obstacle, for each different show and then go on to the next one, have all the, kids do 6 different shows worth of, going across the little river there or whatever. So it was a very intense schedule for sure, which again, only filmed for like 2 years and then reruns forever. And then I guess sometimes the crew kind of after hours would have, would all go out for drinks or something, near Nick Studios or whatever. And then they would all do like run through the
courses,
obstacle course and stuff together. Once they had a couple of beverages, which I'm sure that was quite funny.
I'll say this as a grown adult that goes to trampoline parks with my children. Like, have you ever tried to climb out of a foam cube pit?
Yeah, it's
not fun. Like, as a kid, sure, it's fine because you're not heavy enough to like press down on the foam. But I'm just thinking these guys are grown adults and they're going into the pit and the pendulum stage and they're climbing out of foam cubes. Like, that's going to wear you out. And you're like 3 sheets to the wind on top of that. Like, you're done. You're toast.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that well, again, pre cell phone, so there's probably no, there's no record of it, but I'm sure that was quite hysterical.
I would have, probably wearing the temple guard mask, like, on their, oh God, I don't even want to know about what those Christmas parties must have been like.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, must have been some crazy stuff. Maybe there'll be like some documentary that will come out, like the Lost.
That's right.
The Lost.
They're like, D, do it again. Let's rock. And he's like, hey, he's puking up his margarita at the same time. That's just, I don't know. I just thought of that for some reason.
Yeah, I would watch that. That'd be entertaining. That could be like the Orange Years part 2.
Oh, I would watch that. Just all behind the scenes, with the casting crew. If they ever film that, I would buy that on Blu-ray and I would watch it on my TV.
Right. Yeah, same. So would you say, out of the 5 shows that we've discussed, would you say that Legends of the Hidden Temple is your favorite?
No, 100%. Because it had kind of everything that I liked about the other shows. Like with Double Dare, it had the dope obstacle course at the end, right? With Nick Arcade, it had that kind of fantasy setting that you got with Nick Arcade. With Wild and Crazy Kids, I mean, not as much, but again, I feel like that one's not as much of a game show as it is like just a kind of a kids goofing off on a field day. But still, I mean, in that sense, like it's kids. And then with Guts, you had the athleticism. Some of those challenges they did were legit physical challenges, but under the disguise of being an archaeologist, excavating a tomb or whatever. So it kind of had everything you wanted. Plus, it just the whole vibe of it was, it was just so cool. So it had everything you wanted. It had a great host. Like, it was the perfect kids game show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think my favorite would probably be Double Dare, just because I think that was on at the time where I think my Nickelodeon viewership was at its kind of all-time high, and I think it really inspired me to want to just do stupid stuff around our house, which I'm sure like my mom was
she loved that.
With. Like, could you stop messing up the whole living room and like crawling under the coffee table?
Well, the equivalent now is like stop doing TikTok dances. Seriously, like that's what we're telling our kids to do now. So it's not that different,
right? Yeah, that's true. Like if you're, at least if you're gonna dance, can you do that like around a hamster
That's right.
wheel or like pick a nose or something like that? Yeah. I think my emotional attachment lies with Double Dare for sure. And so to wrap up, so one thing I've decided to start doing with when I have guests on the show, a lot of times I host a show solo, but when I have guests on it, I don't know if you grew up watching Oprah like I did, but my sister and I were obsessessed with Oprah and watched.
I know she was on at 4 o'clock
and,
every day because it was right before the news when my mom would start cooking dinner, but I didn't really watch it. I mean, I'm familiar with Oprah, obviously, but
yes, well, I was raised on Oprah, and Oprah was filmed in
Chicago. That's right.
And
Yeah,
I grew up a little bit outside of there. So, but anyway, so she would whenever she would have celebrity guests on, she would kind of ask them like at the end would ask them like sort of random questions that had nothing to do with the movies that they were in or co-stars or anything like that. It was just like basic, human stuff, like just, simple questions. So I have some just kind of random, simple questions nostalgia questions to ask you if you're
Absolutely.
For a few questions here. So my first one is, what was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon to watch as a kid? There's no such thing as Saturday morning
it's
cartoons
cartoons 24/7 now because, it served its purpose and it was designed to sell toys. And my favorite cartoon is certainly no exception. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, hands down.
Nice. Good. Yes. That is a very good answer. I would agree with that. And that was, what a juggernaut that was.
Still
Oh my
is.
God.
The new movie's coming out in like 3
It's
weeks.
insane.
I'm so pumped for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I wonder what that's going to be rated.
It's PG. I'm taking my kids.
PG.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say I might be able to take my son. Younger son loves stuff like that, so we might have to do that. I'm sure it's much better than the first live action movie that came out.
Oh, hold your tongue.
I think in 1990.
That's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I loved it at the time, but like in hindsight, I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, as far as for kids, I probably wouldn't show my 4-year-old that one, or my 5-year-old, but
right.
8-year-old,
Well,
I'd show my 8-year-old.
home.
I don't know. It's PG.
Yeah, let's run away from home and go to like an underground alley and smoke cigarettes and skateboard.
Listen,
and stuff.
first off, he learned his lesson
like
at the end. Okay, there was a moral there. Okay, and he was, and his name is Danny, so of course I could relate to him. And I'm like, well, I would never do that, and my name is Danny, so I was good.
Right. Well, although at the time I thought that was pretty awesome. I was like, I thought like the whole like running away from home. Not that there was nothing bad to like run away from, but the idea of like running away from home seemed really cool.
Exciting
when I was 8 or whatever. Yeah. But in hindsight, not so much. All right. Next question is, what was your favorite cereal to eat as a kid?
That's a tough one.
And it could be, something that they don't make anymore or is still readily available.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, fortunately, they've actually brought back a lot of stuff they used to make now. I mean, the first one I think of is Oreo O's, which wasn't my favorite. I'll tell you, it was not my favorite. It had to, because I would go through phases where like I would eat one cereal for like a month, and that's because my mom would buy stuff on sale and like stock up because that's how we were kind of poor, and so that's what she would do to save money. So I would say like top 3. Well, I'm going to give you 3. We're going to go Fruity Pebbles, okay, Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
oh God, yes,
and Golden Grams.
Is that still made?
Oh yeah. They actually just came out with a new one called Cinefuego Toast Crunch, which is like basically like flaming hot cinnamon toast crunch, but it's supposed to be eaten like a snack.
It's for cereal.
Well, it comes in like a snack, but it's
for a snack.
I mean it's the same cereal. They added spice to it, so you're supposed to just eat it like a snack.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's getting weird.
I have to do a little. Yeah. That is quite odd. Interesting. Cinnamon and spice. Okay. All right, let's see. What tape or tape or CD did you play until you wore it out or it got scratched to oblivion?
Well, it wasn't a tape. It would have been a CD, which fortunately never wore out because I did take care of my CDs. But I got to go. Well, there's 2 of them actually that I can remember playing on loop. One was a compilation album from Bryan Adams. It was called "The Best of Me," and it just had a lot of his top hits. I love Bryan Adams. And then the other was Creed. It was the Weathered CD. Yes. And I love Creed. Like, unironically love Creed.
Yes. Well, I make many a joke about Creed, but hey,
well, we just
like what you like and don't listen. No need to apologize.
I'll say this, okay, and because I'm very self-aware of my love of Creed. It was 4th of July recently. We're recording this in July. If you have a chance to just really make your day. Head on to YouTube and just type in Scott Stapp singing the national anthem. And it literally, you can hear it in your head right now, and you've never seen the video. I guarantee you it's going to sound 95% close to what you pictured in your head.
Wow.
Yeah, it's what you think
Okay.
it is, and we play it every 4th of July now. That's our national anthem.
Nice. Well, I do a very bad impression of him, which I will.
Oh, he does a bad impression of himself.
but-
I think that was like the top
yeah.
comment in the video. Was like, people seem to forget that Scott Stapp sounds just like an impression of people doing Scott Stapp impressions.
Yeah, nice. Well, and I certainly appreciate that, because I think it's really important. And I used to be I was actually a school counselor for a long time. And one thing I always try to tell kids too is like what you like, even if like, who
Yeah.
cares if it's like the butt of some joke or whatever, like if you like it.
It took me a long time to, like, I was in my 20s before I finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna do me. And it worked.
Right.
And it was like, I
I
had
love
gone
that.
through a really bad
That's
breakup
great.
with a girlfriend that, like, we were living together after college, and like, basically I was like, I couldn't be like, it was not cool for me to like Ninja Turtles or whatever. Like, I just had to keep that to myself. Right. And so
Yeah,
we broke
that
up, and I'm like,
stinks.
you know what, I'm just going to do me. And I'm
Yeah.
going to live my life, because I was living on my own for the first time in my own apartment. And I'm like, if I
Yeah.
want to have Ninja Star coat hangers on my wall, that's what I'm going to get, because it's my place.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah.
I do meet a girl, like, that's going to, and she's down with that. All right, there it is.
Right.
Like, that's it. We're good. And so that's, my
Yeah.
wife and I have been married 10 years, because she was like, she's not into the same stuff as me by a long shot.
Yeah.
But she's like, you do
Right.
you, man. Like,
Right. Yeah, she gets
as
it.
long as you're not like,
Yeah.
going broke buying things for your hobby or habit or whatever, and like, you got your bills paid, like, you're a grown man. Like, you do
Yeah.
you. And
Nice.
so, yeah. Anyway, but
Yeah.
it took me into my mid 20s to finally accept that. And so I will tell anyone listening to this, I don't know what your core demographic is here. I assume it's probably people our age,
Yeah.
but if there are any
Yes,
younger
I think
listeners
so.
that
Yes,
want
it
to
is.
look back at nostalgia, you
Yeah.
do you. I promise you, you're going to thank yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I feel about like my wife too. Is I'm a big like Disney,
Oh, yeah.
Disney World specifically freak. Like I have a whole like it's crazy.
So Disney World, not
but she's
Disneyland,
very supportive.
just so we're clear. Okay.
Correct. Yes, love Disneyland, but grew up going to
Disneyland
Disney
sucks
World
compared
'cause
to Disney World, though. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
it's a whole. Yeah, it's a whole.
Well, it's like fits on the
Apples and
square.
oranges,
Like
but-
it fits on like a half of a Walmart parking lot. That park is so freaking
Yeah.
small, man. And then I went there after Disney World, and I was like, yeah, this is lame. Let's go to California
Yeah.
Adventure.
Yeah, it's definitely two different. It's a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. But I'm a very long term. Was a cast member. It's a whole
love it.
thing. That's for another show. All right, just a few more here. What was your first concert?
Well, we just talked about Creed. It wasn't Creed, but we're close.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I'm gonna give you two guesses. If I say that it's close to Creed, what are you
Okay.
gonna guess?
Lifehouse.
No? Close. What's the other band that everyone hates but like secretly loves?
Hootie and the Blowfish?
No. Okay, never mind. It was
Oh.
Nickelback.
Oh God. Good for you. Why didn't I think of
Good
that?
for you, Dan.
Yeah,
Good
what
for you. You do
Yeah.
Nickelback. Yeah,
For
so
you.
it was.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Hey,
was.
don't apologize.
I have never been a huge concert fan. Like to this day, I don't like
Yeah.
crowds and loud. Like it stresses me
Yeah.
out. So I haven't been to
Same.
a lot of concerts. Actually, the most recent concert I went to was Pitbull a few months back, and that was dope. By the way, for the record,
I bet. Yeah, I bet he puts
incredible.
on a show. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it was Nickelback, Stained, and Daughtry. And this was back in 2006. So I was in college. I got tickets for free by working at the radio station
Yeah.
I was at. And so, because we were giving
Oh,
away
cool.
tickets, so I got free tickets to go. I'm from upstate New York, and so we had a venue called SPAC, the Saratoga Performing Arts Center. It's very well known now because it's like one of the few places Dave Matthews tours every year when he goes on his tours, is SPAC.
cool.
And so
Yeah.
anyway, so it was Nickelback, Stain, and Daughtry, and I mean, that show ripped. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Very cool. Well, that's a lot of benefits to working at a
Well, there
radio
certainly
station
wasn't the
in that
money,
sense. That's
so
pretty cool.
yeah, you had to get
Yeah.
other perks.
That's what I've heard that. That's like
Oh, yeah.
crazy. All right, we'll do two more here. So let's see, what TV sitcom from the 90s could you sit and watch indefinitely now?
Can I say two? They
Sure.
were both on the Disney Channel because again, like
Okay.
one was Growing Pains, and then the other was Brotherly Love.
Nice. Yeah. Oh yeah. Who they're like making
They got a
whole
podcast out now. Yeah, they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, they have a podcast, and I follow them on one of the Lawrence brothers on
Yeah,
Instagram.
I think it's
cool.
like the Brotherly Love podcast, honestly. I think that's like what it's about.
Yeah.
And so I know they talk about it, but and that was another one. It was like 2 seasons, but it felt like forever.
Yeah.
And then, so Growing
let's
Pains
up
was
with
the
that.
other one.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah. Again, I never saw it in its original run. It was in syndication.
Yeah, which I want to say that Danny Cooksey may have been on like an episode.
Oh, maybe. I know Matthew Perry was a recurring
it's quite
character
possible.
for a while before Friends on that show.
Yeah, crazy. All roads lead to
That's
Growing
right.
Pains. All right, my final question is: if you could go back in time to your childhood or adolescence, what do you think you would do first?
Oh, that's a good question. I would probably go for a swim in my above ground pool, assuming it was above 72 degrees.
Nice. And where did you grow up? So you live in Atlanta
I live in
now.
Atlanta. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York near Vermont.
Okay.
It was called Fort Anne, New York, a one traffic light town, very small. The entire school was one building, K through 12, like 600 people, like super small town.
Wow.
So there wasn't a lot to do. So of course I watched a lot of TV. So very very rural. And then I moved down to Atlanta and just got that big city living now. I'll tell you what. No, I'm in the suburbs now, but definitely nice being close to a semi-major city.
Yeah, I concur. I'm about 25 minutes from Portland.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a thriving metropolis.
Ironic because Bangor is the capital. It isn't like a middle of nowhere kind of place.
Kind of, yeah. It's we don't really ever venture that way. There's really no reason to, but there's a fair amount of stuff. Portland. I lived in Portland when I was younger. It's actually a pretty cool place
Must
to
be
live.
a Portland thing because the West Coast Portland's pretty cool too. I hear.
Yes, it is. I went through a phase where I wanted to live there, and that's a whole.
Well, it's funny because
story for another podcast.
The Pacific Northwest and the Atlantic Northeast are basically the same, if you think about it, right? I mean, they're right below Canada, and it's always cold and cloudy, and I'm pretty sure everything looks like a Stephen King novel. Like it doesn't matter. So, it's like
Stephen King is from
he
me.
is,
Yep.
yeah, all of his.
He graduated from the high school.
Oh, nice! There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it called Stephen King High School now? Because that'd be kind of cool.
No, but I don't know if this is true or not, but there's some rumor that like some English teacher at that high school told him like you're writing stinks or something like that. So like the library is like very outdated and, structurally like, I mean, it was a great school, great community. I loved working there, but the school's like, just old and, the library's tiny and so there's like a little placard that says like the Stephen King library, but it's like, a sorry excuse for a library, just in terms of like just space,
Nice.
like just in terms of space and the way that it looks. I mean, great materials,
Sure,
great library and stuff like that, but not up to snuff. That is for sure. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a lot of fun to look back on all these shows. Where can people find your show and your YouTube channel and all that good
Absolutely.
stuff?
Well, first they could find it in your show description, I believe. I think you mentioned. So
yes,
that's the easiest click. But in case you're on the go and you want to find it, we are on all major podcast platforms. So it's iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon. It's all there. You basically look for Generation S. I think now because I think there is another Generation S podcast that was out that did like sports, but I don't think they ever update their show. So, I think I'm slowly rising up from them if you search Generation S. And basically, if you see that weird S symbol that you might have drawn on your notebook in high school, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
So, and then on YouTube at Generation S Podcast. Same thing with, I think Instagram is Generation S Podcast. I need to do more with Instagram, and I have a TikTok channel that I haven't done. Actually, it's funny. One of the last videos I uploaded on TikTok was I took my kids to the Lego Discovery Center here in Atlanta, and one of the Lego masters built a Lego Shrine of the Silver Monkey, and assembled it for me from Legends of the Hidden Temple, And so
God,
I know,
perfect.
and it went sort of viral. There was 200,000 views or whatever. So it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So
I haven't really, but I think I've created a TikTok account, but I haven't done anything with it. Don't really have time to do it. But it seems like a great place to kind of connect with people. But there's only
there's so many hours in the day. Time. But anyway,
Exactly.
so we're on TikTok. But it's I'm not doing much. Most of my activity is going to be on YouTube and on just the podcast, which comes out every Wednesday.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We should do this again.
Absolutely.
sometime.
Well, listen, you're
much
coming on my
fun.
show, don't you? You're
Oh,
not
that's
getting
right.
away
That's
from
right.
me,
Yes,
and we're talking Disney
that's
Channel on
right.
my show.
Yes, I know. Yes, I've been I was actually trying to, like, in the between doing a million things, was trying to watch a little Johnny Tsunami to refresh my memory.
We're talking DCOM's
today.
Disney Channel original movies, so I'm very excited for that.
Yes, and I think Brink is at the top of my list.
Yes,
for those
I would
movies, for
agree.
sure.
Well, spoiler alert, it's probably
Yes.
my favorite as well. So
Yeah, good
Yeah.
choice. Good choice. Great minds think alike.
absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. When we will chat again soon.
Goodbye.